Welcome to Colorful Journeys of Success. Listen to and watch our fascinating guests as they share colorful stories of success and how they help inspire. Now, here's Claire, the color wheeling lady and our host.
Welcome to Colorful Journey of Success. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Claire Mullen, and I welcome you to tonight's show. It's going to be a wonderful show. We're going to be talking to Jerry Spieler. She's a published author, has a fabulous book, option for a movie, and we're going to talk about. She's going to share with us what it's like to be a writer, an author, and on and on and on and on. So, it's my pleasure to welcome Jerry Spieler. Jerry, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, yes.
We want to hear all about it. There's, short time, so much to talk about. So, your success story, Colorful Journey of Success, it's all about successful people who are helping other people. So, you are a successful person.
Thank you.
Talk about your success first.
Well, the book was a big success and a surprise.
Okay.
Because I was a newspaper reporter and a writer, and books were not in my vision. They were too difficult. They were too long. I didn't write books. 1,500 words, that was it. I was done. Mm-hmm. But the book came out of knowing a woman in prison, Sarah Jane Moore, who shot at President Ford, and just communicating with her over the years and sharing letters. She wasn't a friend. I need to make that very clear. Okay. I didn't agree with what she did, but she was interesting. I certainly hadn't met a potential assassin before. So we just kept talking, and then eventually I ended up writing her book. So it was a book of circumstance, and it was wonderful.
Mm-hmm. That must have been really fascinating, though.
It was fascinating. I always like to tell people the research was a lot of fun. The writing, not so much.
I see. Okay.
It was difficult.
But your background, when you first began, when did you start writing?
I started writing as a kid. We used to sit in my room and write. My mom would come in and say, "Are you okay?" I'm going, "I'm fine."
Yeah.
And I write poetry.
It didn't have computers then.
No, it was all, by hand and then yellow pads. But I loved to write, and I was interested in news because to me, if the news was there, something happened. And if the print or the journalists were not there, it may as well have not happened. And I said, I want to be on the side of happening. So I went out and just tried to teach myself how to be a reporter because I majored in English in school, in college, which doesn't teach you how to be a newspaper reporter at all.
Well, that's another question, though. What does it take to be a newspaper reporter?
You have to really be open to all the information, and you have to go after the information. And you have to be suspicious of everyone, because everyone has an agenda. That's not a bad thing. But you have to know that because this person says A, it may not be A, because this person's going to say B, and then somebody else is going to say C. So how do you put that together? You put it all in the story.
Okay. Well, and how do you kind of organize when you have so much information and trust and pick out and assemble it all? It's kind of like a jigsaw puzzle that has to be all piece by piece by piece put together. It's
the inverted triangle, so to speak, but you want to get the reader's attention. Now, there's a difference between writing features and writing hard news. Features, you can take your time, there's more color, you have more time to work on it. It's not hard news. If it doesn't run today, it's okay if it runs next week. Hard news is today, and I have a deadline, and you meet that deadline because you don't have a choice. And you have to get the main piece of information up front. What happened? Who did it happen to? Do you know who did it? And all those pieces have to come together and be clear.
And, how did you give us some ideas about some of the stumbling blocks that you ran into and how you overcame?
The stumbling blocks in terms of being a reporter or just writing in general?
Writing in general, and then we'll get to more.
Writing is not easy, and I don't think it ever gets easier. What you write may change, but the stumbling blocks sometimes were information or time. Sometimes there just didn't seem to be enough time to finish something. So that was difficult. And other stumbling blocks can be getting your work out there and having people see it. That's difficult. That's really difficult.
Do you have some tricks of the trade that help you get over those stumbling blocks?
Well, you have to say it's okay. There's no competition. I used to have a Post-it on my computer that said there's no competition, and just keep going. And just be persistent and know that you're a good writer and believe in yourself. I think that's a big stumbling block for writers, is we often feel like, oh, well, I'm not good enough and nobody's going to want to see what I wrote.
Right. Rejection.
Yeah.
That fear of
big time.
rejection?
Yes.
Yeah, I believe that. It was interesting because I took a class over at Dance College, and one of the tricks that the instructor gave us was that you never know exactly when to stop. A person keeps writing and writing and writing. So he said, think of bookends.
Yeah.
So visualize and create in your mind what the bookends look like, and kind of like put
Keep that in mind,
the start, the finish, whatever. So it was a visual. I thought that was very visual. So I actually drew a picture of bookends. And
well, that would help. Yeah, depending on what you're writing. Yeah, it could work. Yeah.
So when you're writing to the audience or for the audience, or talk about that.
Well, my experience is narrow in terms of, you know, being a nonfiction person. So I don't write fiction, which I'm so in awe of people who write fiction. It's just amazing to me. But I think of the whole story, and I know what I want to put into it, and I know where it has to end. I think, though, we can keep writing. I was editing my book up until the day I think it got published. We're always editing. We're always editing. Nothing is ever done. It's just what the writer said, it's abandon and frustration, because you don't have a choice. And a lot of other authors I've talked to said, I could rewrite my book all over again. I said, yeah, I know what you mean. I could rewrite this all over again. I see it differently now.
That's true.
Yeah.
I believe that. I believe that. Who was your mentor?
My mentor, I think, was a couple different people, and I can't remember their names, unfortunately, but the first editor I had when I was working in Los Angeles started off with a small magazine, basically had me wearing every hat, and she said, you have to know how to sell ads, you have to know how to write, you have to know how to research, you have to know how to take pictures. And then the other mentor was my editor at the San Francisco Chronicle, Jim Brewer. He's the one who gave me that big chance to really leap into the major players. And he was always, he would put me down sort of, and every day I said, I'm going to quit. And then I get the newspaper and I see my story. Well, I guess I'll stay. But he basically said, you have to put together the dots. Put together the dots. Always think about that when you're doing a story, no matter whether it's, hard news or feature or whatever, put the dots together and line it up, and then you'll see your story come together.
Okay, so how important do you think it is for a new writer to learn storytelling skills?
I think that some of that has to come from them. If you're not interested in stories, you're not going to be able to write about them. But I think you have to leap into the person you're writing about, because then you can sort of see the story from their eyes and understand, what they may be going through. Do they have a cold? Are they problems in their marriage? Are the kids sick? What's going on with this person? And I think the story can come through that.
Interesting. Now, what would you say are some areas that maybe writers should stay away from?
I don't think there's anything a writer should stay away from. I think it's all out there.
Okay.
Yeah. If somebody told me to stay away from something, excuse me, the first thing I do is go after it.
Right. Well, I believe that's you. I'm not sure about other writers.
Yeah.
So actually, that would be, you could give a lesson on how to go for it.
Yeah. You have to go for it.
Yeah.
And you can't let anything get in the way, and don't listen to the naysayers. Don't listen to people who said, oh, nobody's going to want to read about that. Oh, no one cares about that. There was a woman in a workshop that said, well, if you can't do all the research and you've got gaps in there, nobody's going to want to publish your book. Well, I haven't seen her book on the market yet.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a real good point. So what are other thoughts that you have on that particular topic?
On books?
Well,
yeah. It's a big field.
Yeah.
I really strongly believe you have to believe in yourself. I think that's so important, especially since I went through a lot of ups and downs getting my book published. And people would tell me, well, the work really starts after you get a publisher. And I didn't understand what they were talking about. The book's written. You know, it's done. No, it's not done.
No.
It continues. You have to keep saying, I believe in this, and I believe in this, and I believe in this, and stay with it, because it's very easy to quit.
Okay. Okay, how about published versus self-published?
Oh, that's delicate. I think that for some people, self-publishing isn't an option, and it was not an option for me. If it's a book that, if it's a novel and you're not worried about anybody coming at you, then self-publishing is probably the way to go, because today it's very difficult to get an agent, and you can't get to the big publishers without an agent. You can get to the smaller publishers, but there's a lot of new ways to publish now that I'm finding there's sort of hybrids between a small publisher and self-publishing and these different things. I never looked at that because I knew it wouldn't work for me. I had to go the commercial route. And I was able to do it, you know.
Yes. And so when you started meeting this woman that you were going to be writing about, I bet that was interesting.
That was fascinating.
Yes. What was the conversation like the first time you met?
I'm glad you asked that question, because this is really a riot. She wrote to me. I was working in LA and for the paper, and I was asked to write a story about Sybil Brand Jail, the largest women's jail in the country, and there was a class action suit. So, newspaper story. So I went and I wrote this story, and it was published. And she had already shot it for. I wasn't covering her. I was in LA, but she was in San Diego at a federal facility being evaluated by the psychiatrist because she pled guilty. And Judge Conti said, you know, wait a minute, I need to make sure I cover my bases here. We need to have you evaluated. She saw my story about women in prison. In her mind, because I wrote about women in prison, I was sympathetic about women in prison. Well, I wrote about murder too, sympathetic. So she wrote to me and asked to meet me after she was sentenced, and she was in San Pedro, a Terminal Island facility. And after that, she put my name down, and I went to meet her. And I'm sitting in a human warehouse. You know, it's all these gray walls and benches, and I'm just sitting there by myself, and they're supposedly getting Sarah Jane. And a woman comes out with kind of curly hair and street clothes, and she walks over to me, and I said, I'm waiting for Sarah Jane. And she said, oh, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for coming. This is delightful. I'm thinking, are we going to lunch? That was the person I was interviewing.
Ooh.
It could be your
she had
neighbor.
Social skills.
Oh, major social skills.
Yes.
Major social skills. She's charming. She is impeccable manners. She's very, very bright. She knows how to work people. She married some very, very impressive men. She married a physician. She married a sound designer in Los Angeles. She married, her first husband was an Army Air Force person. I mean, she could do it. She
was charming.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
She could charm.
It was a cognitive dissonance. It's like, wait a minute, I'm in a prison, and this woman is telling me it's delightful?
Well, okay, well, maybe it was, as far as you were concerned, talking to someone new like you. Okay, so now you have met this woman. Okay. Now, as I mentioned before, Colorful Journey of Success is about a person with a success story who is helping another person succeed. And in a sense, this is the woman that you're going to be helping succeed.
I guess you could look at it that way.
It's a different angle.
She's not very happy about the success I've given her.
But in a sense, this is who she thought she was going to have you help her.
Yeah.
And yes.
Yeah, and it doesn't work that way.
Well, okay. Yeah. Well, let's talk about that. Why doesn't it work that way? If this is her life, this is her story, why can't she tell you what to write?
Well, she could. And I said no, because I knew that there was more to it. If she wanted to do her own biography, she could write it herself.
That's true.
But a lot of publishers turned her down.
Oh, how did you find that out?
I found that out because I was researching about writing about her, and she told me some people to go see, and they turned out that they were other publishers. They said, we're not going to touch her because she won't tell us, you know, what we need to know. And I decided they weren't going to go digging after her. And I'd known her for 27 years, and I had all these letters and all this up and down and crazy stuff that she told me. But I don't go home and research people. I'm not going to leave here and go researching Claire Mullen. You know,
you're not?
No. Why not?
I thought you were going to.
Yeah. So, you know, I think in terms of helping people, what I like to do is to help other writers.
All right.
And
so, yes, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that was kind of my next topic, because you as a coach and my book coach, because you are helping me.
I hope so.
We've just begun.
Yeah.
But in reading your website, there's a lot of people that you have helped. Let's talk about them. What have been some experiences that you remember specifically? I
remember helping people sort of do the research to do their book, and also give them some guidance in terms of, you know, ways to go through that. I love helping other writers because people helped me. I had so much support writing that book. I want to give back. So when somebody is just interested in asking me about the agent process, or what I think about that, or how should they publish, or how did they put together, maybe, you know, like you said, their story, connecting the dots, you know, it's a conversation. And it's not a closed conversation, it's an open conversation. Right. And it's also being a cheerleader.
Yes, that's the encouragement is very important.
It really, really is.
Well, you know, if you are coaching someone and you really don't see a value in what they're writing, then can you be honest and kind of like steer them in a different direction, or what would you do? How do you handle it? I don't believe that there's no value in what somebody's writing. That's not for me to judge. All right. That whatever they want to write about has value to them or someone else. Okay. So I would never tell someone, what you're writing doesn't make any sense, it's no good. I wouldn't do that. Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, that's interesting, because so many people say, oh, I want to write a book. I talked to a woman last night, in fact, oh, yes, I've been thinking about quitting her job at, well, I won't mention the company, very good company. And I'd like to really write a book. I'd like to write a screenplay. And she's going on and on and on. I'm thinking, you're just, at this point, you're just starting to think about it. Right. And so if a person has all these wonderful ideas, and they don't really have that much to write about, how would you handle that? They would need to learn what they want to write. Everybody, as you know, I've got a story. I've got, or the other thing is, you should write about this. No, you should. Right. There's no shortage of wonderful ideas, but as you know, putting them down is very different. You know, you can get a half a page and then like, now what? Right. So that's when you have to take it apart and start looking at the pieces. Because every story is interesting. Everyone's life is interesting. Right. Everyone, you know, we all have things we go to. But how are you going to put that down in a way that's going to be value for someone else to read it, that makes sense? Right. And that's when you have to back up. Are there some little tricks or tips, process that you use? I would take each character and write a little life story about each character. All right. In some other work that I'm doing, I basically had to do, you know, chronology, a genealogy about this person, this person, this. When was this one born? Where did this one live? When was this one born? What's the relationship? Because I couldn't put it down unless I could be clear on this one and that one. So, you know, it's like when you're reading novels, and these wonderful writers make each person live. How did they do that? Right. And you're telling the story. Yeah. And with a flow. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so if, okay, if I were the person that's telling you, okay, let's do this kind of switch. Okay. Okay. And I'm the one that wants to write that book. And you know, how would you approach me? Well, if you were asking me to help you write the book, if I were your coach, I would want to know, you know, who are the players? What's the story behind this? What's the conflict that's going to come out of this book? Because, you know, they go like this. You have plots. And so plots go up and down and up and down. And when you think things can't get worse, they do. Okay. And that's the tension in the book.
but I think you need to see a plot outline, and then you need to hang people on it.
Interesting. Okay, well that's good information, and I'm sure that this. By the way, your book cover is very interesting. I meant to mention that. I wanted to mention that. And President stands out.
Yes.
Oh, let's talk about book covers. Yeah, let's talk about book covers.
I didn't design that.
Okay.
My publisher did.
All right. So when you first, did they give you several designs, possible, like drafts? First?
They didn't ask my permission about any of that.
Oh.
They, you know, they basically said, this is what we're going to do.
Okay.
So I can't take any credit or blame for it. I think they did a good job, and I think it gathers, you know, people's attention.
Well, did you have any ideas yourself that you submitted?
No, I really didn't. I hadn't thought about that part of it. I was so steeped in the morass of the people and the events and how we're going to put it together and what's going to go in and what's going to come out, that the last thing for me was doing a book cover. If I were publishing myself, then I would have to come up with a book cover, and I'd probably put more thought into it.
Okay.
But I have to say, thankfully, I didn't.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, it's interesting because I did a little research myself on the anatomy of a book. The book matter at the beginning and at the end, and of course the content.
Yeah.
And all these different pieces. And it is literally a jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah.
Putting it all together.
Yes.
And how important are the pieces in the front, in the book matter, like the preface and the forward and all of these other
content.
Well, the table of content, that's a have to.
Yeah.
Dedications and.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it depends on the book, and some people have acknowledgments and some don't. I see more of that in some nonfiction, but certainly major authors might have it at the end because they'll say, this person helped me, I don't know what I've done without them. I can understand that because there are people it's not one person that writes a book, it's a group of people that write a book. People who helped you, people who do research, people who stood by you when you're tearing your hair out.
Oh yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's so very important, and so, you know, as I mentioned before, that the interview goes very, very fast. So we have about 5 minutes left. So I'm going to ask you, what have we missed in this interview?
What have we missed? I think one of the things that's important to me in nonfiction is accuracy.
All right.
Because if it's nonfiction, it's nonfiction. And you have to be very, very true and very careful about your facts. There's a lot of fact in fiction. And there was a writer from Macmillan who lost his contract. And that can happen. They can pull the contract at any time. Just because you sign it doesn't mean they can change their minds and say no. He was writing a book about Vietnam.
Okay.
And he was telling a story about a battle, you know, in Vietnam in some location with certain kinds of ammunition, guns. And he was wrong. And one of the editors at Macmillan had been in Vietnam and said, this never could have happened. This is not okay. If he's got this wrong, what else does he have wrong? And they pulled the contract on him. And that's pretty shocking. You know,
yes.
I think that as a reporter and as somebody who believes in this, you really have to be careful, even in your novels.
Okay, so accuracy. Now we're shorting a couple minutes more.
Okay.
Anything else?
Compassion.
Compassion.
I think you need to have compassion for yourself and the people you're writing about.
Believe in yourself.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And one thing that I always ask my guests at the end of the show is, give us a wow. And a wow is a word of wisdom. A little short phrase, 3 or 4 words, you know, to leave with the audience and to motivate them. And give us a wow.
Well, I don't know if this is a wow, but I really believe that you should never give up.
Okay.
Don't let anybody stop you. Don't give up. I think that's so important.
Yes.
It really is.
That is absolutely. Absolutely. There was a priest in San Jose that always said, never give up, never give up. In fact, he had never give up actually written in the front of the Catholic's church.
Yes.
And Father Jim, we all missed him, but he said, never give up. And he'd go to the prisons, and he helped so many people. So never give up is such a jewel. It is an absolute jewel.
I'm going to bring it around to a wow for me.
Mm-hmm.
That this book's going to be a movie.
Yes.
That's my wow.
Well, I congratulate you on that. Without a doubt.
Thank you.
And yeah, geez, it's such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
And you're such a delightful person. And the first time we met, we were talking about maybe you writing my book, and I think you said, no, you better write your book.
Nobody can write your book. You're such a wonderful writer, and you've got so much into it. No one can tell your story the way you can tell your story. And don't give up.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Sherry.
Thanks for having me.
Really, really, really.
Yeah.
So anyway, listen, I'm so glad that you joined Colorful Journey of Success. And if you have a story, if you'd like to be interviewed, I'd love to talk with you. Please, my name is Claire Mullen. Colorful Journey of Success, and I wish you so much success in whatever you endeavor and whatever your goals are. Have a happy life. Bye for now.